Artists here, so many creative people here. You're in for a real treat. I just recently got to know Agnes's work myself, and I was absolutely blown away. And I'm so happy that she's here to share with us tonight what inspires her and how she has created this beautiful life of art. 40 years of art. I want to tell you a little bit about Agnes. It's from the back cover of her book. This is her book. It's full of photographs of her work. Agnes Olive, born Canadian, is a gypsy at heart. She has lived in Lahore, Pakistan, Ghana, and West Africa, Indonesia, and currently in San Miguel Allende, Mexico. And she's here in La Manzanilla every winter for a couple of months too. Her 6-month around the world trek opened up her to many new experiences that have greatly influenced her work in Spirit of the Earth. That's what we're going to be seeing tonight. She is a graduate of Sheridan College School of Design in Ontario, Canada, a certified art therapist with the National Expressive Therapy Association, New York. Her art has been exhibited in many countries and received several awards. Agnes is the author of Letters from Pakistan, One Woman's Odyssey, available from Amazon.com. So please welcome Agnes Olive.
For coming tonight, all of you. And I want to thank my friends who kept moving me up on the messenger board. That is one powerful board.
Okay.
Okay. And first of all, I want to introduce a surprise for me. My son Stephen arrived here. Stand up, Stephen. I saw him for the first time today, and he said, I wanted to surprise you. So he has surprised me. Okay, I'm going to leave this photo, Crazy Teapots, on the screen while I read to you just one page, how I became an artist. This has always been a surprise to me, and I call it the awakening. My career as an artist began at an art college. Oh, by the way, I do have a throat thing going on. So if you can't hear me, please put up your hand or yell or something to let me know, okay? My career as an artist began at an art college open house in a small Canadian town. I watched in awe as a young girl tossed a clump of moist red clay on a potter's wheel and magically spiraled it upward with her 2 hands that firmly but gently seduced this piece of earth into a tall, slender vase. In that moment, a transformation took place. A part of me that had been dormant all these years suddenly awakened. The next morning, I was nervously led by an invisible but firm hand to the art college and enrolled as a full-time student for a 2 or possibly 3-year period. I'd never held clay, had absolutely no background in art, and had at no time considered becoming an artist. The miracle is that I never questioned this decision, and with no art portfolio, I was accepted into the program. What happened? The entire event seemed to have been taken out of my hands. I graduated majoring in clay and printmaking, and for the next 4 years, I worked in a small studio adjoining our house in the hamlet of Terracotta. Isn't that appropriate? I experimented with the local clay, and after much trial and error, discovered its secret. With a feeling of reverence, I placed the first piece I completed into a hole I dug and ceremoniously returned it to the earth. I then realized that if I was going to devote my life to clay, I needed more knowledge. With a portfolio now under my arm, I applied to Sheridan College School of Art and Design. and was miraculously accepted into year 2 of a 3-year program. This was one of the most rewarding and difficult decisions that I ever made in my life. The school was demanding, and I had a 45-minute drive twice a day, often through snowstorms. My offspring went to school by bus, so we're gone all day, but I still had a family to care for and tried to be a wife and mother as well as a full-time student. Many women will relate to this experience, I'm sure. The year I graduated, a heritage forge became vacant in terracotta. I asked 2 artists to join me, and we pleaded with the local council not to tear it down, as was the plan, but to let us use it as a local artist studio and a gallery. They conceded with the mandate that they never wanted to hear from us, asking for any help in repairs or in anything. We agreed and spent the next 20 years in what became the Forge Studio Gallery. Many years later, I confided in a reading with a shamanic astrologer that I did not consciously remember choosing to be an artist. "You didn't," he replied. "It chose you. It was your sacred contract." And now we are going to the crazy teapots.
Agnes, do you want me to?
Teapots. During my last year at the School of Design in 1979, were my first series of work in raku. I don't know how many of you here know raku, probably most of you. A raku tradition, but demanding, and although I loved the soft celadon pieces for me, they did not have any soul. As a result, my work was becoming tight and controlling, and I felt this person inside me kicking and screaming to break loose, to have some fun, to take risks. I wanted to be less of a technician and more of an artist, and certainly more spontaneous. I stored away my porcelain and immediately made the first of my crazy teapots. So this is the first raku that ever came out. Unimpeded by past rules, I tossed a hunk of raku clay onto the wheel and purposely did not wedge it, so it would be almost impossible to center. As this ill-disciplined, wobbly form extended upward, a child inside gurgled to the surface, and a raku potter was born. I experienced a marvelous sense of freedom as I allowed the clay to lead, and I followed with abandon. I wanted the clay to speak, to be co-conductor on this new journey. After many years, the long struggle for a communion with the clay and myself was complete. Over the years, I developed glazes that resembled lichen or old rusty metal. I deliberately underfired them to give an ancient look, and this became my trademark. Something's happening. This is a crazy teapot inspired by a muffler I found on the road. And I took it home and left it in my studio for a while, and then one day, all of a sudden, I am making what I called muffled tea. The next one, Nancy. Called Bad Gods, and the one on the left, as you know, is on the cover of the book. In the 1980s, I made my first trip to Asia, a continent that would be a source of inspiration throughout my entire career. In Bali, Indonesia, I was fascinated with the daily offering baskets for the Bad Gods, a Hindu practice that incorporated local animism and ancestor worship. I knew I had touched into something that resonated deeply within me. I let my imagination flow with the Bad Gods and introduced bones and wire into the clay. I followed my instinct and allowed the clay to take the lead. Next one. These are two more bad gods with bones and wire. And I was experimenting all the time because I never knew if the wire was going to melt or the bones were going to melt. But it was a very exciting time for me. And this is a quote from the curator of Mississauga Art Gallery where I was having an opening. Olive's pieces have a primeval feeling to them, as if they'd been excavated and bear upon them the history and ritual of some ancient culture. The effect of nature may be subliminal, but always perceptible in the finished work. Next. These are now offering baskets for the bad gods. Small baskets, these are, I haven't been telling you sizes, I'm sorry. Every once in a while I'll give you an idea of scope. This is 16 inches square. Small baskets woven daily of palm fronds and thin sticks were filled with flowers and varieties of small foods. Each morning I quietly witnessed the ritual in ballet in my room. The incense was lit and a prayer said as the small basket offering of gratitude were placed in various locations, including low on the ground, to please the bad gods. I was touched by the purity and beauty of this ritual and the direct relationship the people had with their gods. I borrowed from this essence of these baskets, using them as a springboard, as an exploration into new forms and surfaces and the concepts of offerings. The transition from palm leaves to clay was challenging and exciting. I kept the form simple, thus allowing the surface texture to speak, and attempted to leave enough energy in the work so it continued to speak on its own. The next, please. This is the offering basket with the rabbit skull. These skulls were given to me by both my sons, Steve and Michael. And I don't know which was which, but... And the next. These are double-spouted temple vessels, as you can see. And they're actually not solid, but you could take that little lid off and put water in it and it would pour. But they really weren't meant to be functional. The next. Okay. What I want to tell you about this glaze, it has about 4 colors, is that it's a glaze I worked on myself for 10 years. Because I wanted to get, first of all, I wanted it to look old and dug up, but I wanted it to have more than one color. And the top comes off there, the head, and you can put water in there. And the 2 figures in the middle at the bottom are representing life and rebirth, which a lot of my work represented. Okay, the next, please. This is called Repositories for Transient Souls. Whether I'm surrounded by ancient ruins, sitting quietly in a Buddhist garden, or watching an old village woman grinding corn, I am filled with a sense of reverence for all these aspects of life and attempt to carry this felt sense into my work. I fell in love with the simplicity of the grinding stones called metates, and of course you know these are used in Mexico. And I transposed them into vehicles for souls who were in transition. They would reside on altars as offerings, waiting for the souls to be called to the other side. This is called Repository for Souls, Transient Souls. It's 9 by 16 inches. and I am honored that 2 years ago it was accepted into the permanent collection of the Gardner Museum in Toronto. The next, please. Oh, there we go. This is part of the series that I was getting ready for a show. I have to tell you a story about this one. I had it all wrapped up ready, and the morning I was to take my work into Toronto, I brought that out of the cupboard, and a mouse had got in and had eaten all the corn silk. So I had to jump in the car and drive over to this farm where the woman now just let me come and go. And I ran into her cornfield, and I got some corn silk. Just the next one, please. This is another repository for transient souls, and it has bone. I love wrapping bones. It has bone and fiber. And once again, that's the same place. Okay, the next. It's called Temples of the Mind.
I missed it.
Oh, it is without mind. And I look back on my life and understand in hindsight that I had been guided. At the time, of course, I did not realize this was taking place. A muse just silently slipped in unnoticed. One Sunday afternoon, as I was sitting in my gallery in terracotta, an angel named Mips. I was sitting in the gallery in terracotta. An angel named Mips walked in. She had soft white hair, light delicate skin, and a special aura. She quietly walked around the gallery, pointed at my raccoon, and asked, "Is this your work?" I replied in the affirmative, and she said, "You need to come with me tomorrow to a yoga center that is only 20 minutes from here." Much to my amazement, I accepted her offer, and this led to 8 years of 1 day a week, physical yoga, and intense introspective that included a weekly written paper. These teachings were long overdue and started me on a spiritual path that became the focus of my exhibition, Temples of the Mind, at the Koffler Jewish Center for the Arts in Toronto. I produced a collection of 9 temples using the simple, powerful form of a Shinto shrine, which is what that is. My exhibition statement read, "I recognize and honor all aspects of my personality. Each has its own ego, its own voice wanting to be heard, and a constant battle goes on in my mind." And I made 9 temples, and under each temple was written an affirmation on a scroll of handmade paper. And under this one, excuse me, "O martyr, who throws me on the sacrificial altar and prays for recognition and gratification, I recognize and honor thee." This is 12 inches high, and that is a real bird skeleton. And this is all raccoon clay, everything's been raccoon clay, except now is a little bit different. This is adobe clay and bones. O sensitive, fragile one, who encouraged me to listen to that inner voice that leads to the quiet center within, I recognize and honor thee. And the third one is all earth, adobe, thank you. O primitive one, whose simplicity and directness reminds me that I am one with the earth, I recognize and honor thee. Next, please. The spirit dancers. I loved doing these. These just made themselves. I made 12 of them, and they're 3 feet high. and they're on wire that moves. Figurative assemblages composed of organic and metallic found objects were constructed on movable wire armatures and provided a release after the tight, often intense concentration that went into temples of the mind. They were placed in the gallery on a periphery of the temples as a dance of celebration to the spirits that were being recognized. They were a joy to produce as they seemed to take on a life and create themselves. They had the esteem of holding the sacred place. Okay, next please. Now we're going into a whole new part. This, I would love to tell you, is clay and that I made it, but of course it's not. It is a wall in... It's in Sulawesi. Yeah, I was trying to find, I have a name for it. But how many people have seen this wall? Isn't it amazing? I just couldn't believe the first time. And there's big bamboo wires that go up to it. And anyway, it started another body of work for me. The body of work, Emerging Consciousness, was inspired by 4 months of travel in Indonesia. On the island of Sulawesi, a group of Trojan people still practice cave burials. They carve out holes in the cave, sometimes large enough for a family. The corpse that has been embalmed in formaldehyde is then placed in a coffin in this hole, and a carved wooden effigy called tau-taus are placed out front in a balcony. The experience was just overwhelming, and I would say to any of you, go there if you can. The sites are high on the cliff and accessible only by bamboo constructed ladders. Trojans do not believe a person is gone when he dies, and it is often weeks, months, or years before they are buried. I returned to my studio in Terracotta, Canada, and produced a clay exhibition entitled Emerging Consciousness. They reminded me of the discussion at my yoga center about an emerging of a universal consciousness that was happening. I felt so intensely that this was the message I was receiving and I wanted to share. And this was in the early 80s. Next, please. And this is all rock clay. And the next. A friend gave me this stone that was incredible, and I was able to get the surfaces. And the figures I made, and these are made of, what's that? These are made out of polyclay, and they are different gods that I brought back from different countries. The next. Straight up and down. And I was getting a little tired of this. I wanted something with more movement, as you saw in the first slide. So, next please. I took a figure just like the bowl before, and these are solid clay, so they're strong, thank God. And I just made this form. I held it like this. I held it like this over the cement floor, and I went, and I let it fall. I had no idea what was going to happen. And these figures turned around and moved, and I fell in love with the whole idea. Stand. So I'm having fun trying to move all this around. From 1984 to 87, I lived in Lahore, Pakistan, where I was invited to be ceramic artist in residence at the National College of Art. This residency did not work out, and I found myself without a studio. I had to find a new creative medium or go stark raving mad. I had just left a thriving career where I worked at least 5 days a week at my art. What would I do for 3 years without a studio? A visit to Japan inspired me to return and teach myself to make paper out of natural materials. I later shared this knowledge with the students at the college. This was a turning point in my art career. I had no idea where to begin, but I had once watched a 10-year-old boy at the Toronto Science Centre pull paper through a screen, and I thought if a young boy could do it, surely so could I. A Canadian friend sent me a beginner's guide to paper making. It took months to get screens made in the local markets and experiment with different materials. I ended up by using bagasse, which is the flattened sugarcane stalks after the juice is removed. I collected this from the local cane stands, often with much drama. I have written another book, Letters from Pakistan, and quite a bit of it tells you about my adventures in paper making, and it's available on Kindle and it's quite inexpensive if you want to know more about this. I could not go out unaccompanied and was fortunate to have the company of our hired driver, Komar. I needed his help for this venture. In Urdu, he asked the vendor if the Mem Sahib could have a few bags of these scraps. He was reluctant to give it to us and inquired what would I do with it. We had drawn the usual large crowd of curious men. And when Komar, somewhat embarrassed, told him I was going to cook it and make it into paper, there was stunned silence as they all turned and stared at me in awe, as though I was the next Messiah. In my 3rd year, I was invited to exhibit at the National Art Gallery in Lahore. My artist statement read, all of his gathered materials from the local markets, street vendors, and countryside in an attempt to use only readily available indigenous materials, and wishes to share with the public her emotional responses and perceptions, her ways of seeing, Broomsticks sold by the pound were interspersed with other natural materials gathered from fields and the markets. To my amusement, it was suggested that this was a new form of witchcraft. I just love that. These were all individual little boxes that I made, and those are the broomsticks, which I fell in love with. They were so handy. Paper broomstick fibers. This is 52 inches high. When my exhibition was over in their National Gallery, that I had made 52 pieces with the use of one kitchen blender that I shared with the cook. I can't believe I did it. If someone told me today, I'd say, no way. But he would come into my studio and he'd go, and he'd pick it up and take it out and sterilize it. And then when I needed it, I'd go back into the kitchen and bring it back again. It's amazing what you can do when you don't know any better. Years. It felt so wonderful to be back in my own studio and gallery in terracotta and reunited with my beloved raku. I now had an added skill of paper making, but no sugar cane stands to supply the bagasse. I would one day in a few years return to paper making, but wanted now to work exclusively in clay. Exhibiting in gallery invitational exhibitions and at the Forge Studio. Jane Mahout, who was the director of the Koffler Gallery in Toronto, put together an exhibition called Raku, Then and Now, consisting of work of 4 Canadian raku potters. I was fortunate to be part of this show that traveled to England and Finland. And I got the cutest little note. I saw it in England later. There was a postcard from this man. He said, "Only somebody living in terracotta could make as crazy teapots as this." I loved it. This very productive and fulfilling period lasted for 8 years. I then accepted another offer to work abroad, and at the time did not realize that I had completed my career as a raku artist. Handmade paper was about to reappear in my life. In 1995, I was invited by the Canadian University Services overseas to go on a 2-year contract with ADAG, which was Aid to Artisans Ghana. And for any Canadians here, this is CUSO in West Africa, to help them set up a gallery and oversee their marketing. I was at the height of my career, not very happy to leave, but the call of adventure was won out. I always wanted to go to Africa. I accepted the invitation and, accompanied by my newly retired husband, moved to Accra, Ghana. 6 months into the contract, I became ill with malaria and had to leave Ghana. But there's a happy ending to this story. Our house and my studio gallery were rented for 2 years, so we could go anywhere we chose to in the world for 18 months. We had previously visited San Miguel de Allende, Mexico, for a month over a period of 4 years, and this is where we chose to live. 23 years later, I am still very happily living and working in this beautiful cultural heritage city. Shortly after our arrival, I had the good fortune to meet a very talented creative paper maker, and together we set up a studio using, with much experimentation, many natural materials. Corn had similar properties to sugarcane, so it was chosen. We were surrounded by cornfields, and the farmers were happy to let us haul away the dried stalks. My previous experience working with sugarcane was invaluable. Corn was also appropriate because it is a Mexican legend that man is made of corn. Most of you probably know this. The legend goes, he was made of clay, but the rains came and washed him away. He was then made of wood, but the wood was stiff and would not bend. Corn was then introduced. It entered the body and gave it life. Although I didn't know what it was. I found myself going to my studio every day and making small figures from sticks, bones, seeds, and grasses, giving them bird-like faces. Dried corn silk became their hair, and dark seeds in their eyes. I had no idea where they came from or what they represent, but was captivated and could not stop making them. Eventually, 26 of these figures graced my studio wall and greeted me each morning. They took on individual personalities and made me smile. One day, a poet friend called to read me her latest poem on croning. I had never heard of a crone, but her poem spoke of being in her 3rd stage of life, exactly where I was. I then realized these figures were my invitation to brace this time in my life, a time of celebration. I eagerly researched the history of the crone and invited 21 female friends onto my rooftop to share in my ceremony of officially becoming a crone. A special friend, a shaman, led the initiation. What followed were large crone figures, anywhere from 3 to 5 feet tall, from wire and handmade paper, with papyrus hair covering oval faces. They seemed to make themselves and just kept coming. Some were almost my height, and others smaller tabletop versions. Long beads from corn seeds and painted tea bags and brightly colored boas adorned these figures and gave them a sense of freedom and joy. Small sunglasses added a debonair appearance. Move this. That I love of the crone derives from an indigenous source. When a woman no longer gives her blood back to Mother Earth, it is retained in her body and transformed into divine wisdom and knowledge. Isn't that beautiful? On a shield, but that is actually about 12 inches high, and it's about 26 of those that I made, and that was the beginning of the crone. The next. The next. Can you go back? Oh, it's funny, these two here. And boa. And I love the sunglasses that somebody brought me, a friend from the States. And they're wire. I didn't know how to make these, which I always think is fun when you don't know what you're doing and you just have to play with it. But they're made with wire and, God, what do you call it stuff? Pull things through. I can't think of the name, but, and chicken wire.
Yeah, chicken wire.
It was chicken wire. And I would pull it through maybe 5 to 6 times, liquid paper, and I would leave just enough holes because I liked that look. And then I got the boas, and the hair is made from papyrus. These were really fun. Now this is the one that's my height, and it is my self-portrait.
The next one?
No, next one, sorry. This one. Now that's where you can really see the papyrus hair. And the beads are all made from corn. Next. Okay, this is not it. This is a 3-foot one. And gives you a closer look up at your face. And this is all papyrus again. And I made all the faces out of screen, fine screen that I pulled through handmade paper. This is the quilt. This is my version of a quilt. It's called Together We Are More. I grew up in a family of quilters and tea drinkers. The childhood memory of my grandmother, mother, and aunts stitching, sipping tea, and sharing stories has been resting patiently in my storehouse of memories waiting to emerge. Tea bags that were saved for me by female friends triggered these memories and inspired my version of a quilt, combining the tea bags which I painted, handmade paper, and the worry dolls from Guatemala. The theme is women supporting women, and together we are more. I am blessed to be living in a town of strong, caring women, ready with supporting hands and hearts whenever needed. These pieces are my tribute to such women all over the world. Next. Okay, this is after I came back from Ghana, and I was again drawn to the quilt when I returned from working in Ghana and West Africa. While I lived there, I experimented with printing inks and amazing Adinka stamps, hand-carved from gourds. I brought them back to Canada and used them to make a Dinka quilt. They are symbols that represent concepts such as patience, leadership, courage, and many more. And this is about 32 by 42. Next. This is the second one that's represented after Africa. And it was decorated with handmade stamps that I developed using the tribal code as models. The beads hanging from both quilts are a mixture of beads from the famous Ghana bead market and handmade beads from polyclay. It was my first experiment with Pellin. These two pieces are not handmade paper. I just wanted to play with Pellin. It was my first experiment with Pellin and the different weights. I always get excited about jumping into the unknown of new materials. It's exhibited in San Miguel de Allende during the celebration of the Day of the Dead. When I moved to San Miguel, I was, of course, extremely interested in the Day of Dead, celebrated from October 28th to November 2nd. Altars include offerings and photographs of the deceased are displayed publicly and privately in homes. My love of ritual and theme of birth, death, rebirth is such an important part of my work. So in spite of the fact that I'm not Mexican, I had a sense of joy and reverence creating these pieces that welcome back the ancestors. This piece is 32 by 42, and it is made from corn. All these pieces are made from corn. And the figures that look like clay, I actually made from clay first, made a mold, and then made them out of paper. And these little black things I think are fun because they're tea bags. This is actually one of my favorite pieces. And it's 32 by 42. Next, this is all from the same exhibition that I had. And in the gallery, I had candles all around and marigolds. So it was quite fun. And these pieces, these heads sticking out, are also made from paper. I made them first in clay and then paper. And the rest are real bones. And this is 32 by 42. These are all pretty well the same size. And this next. This is again Return of the Ancestors and sticks and bones, fiber. I love the way you can see around the bone part, the little marks that are left from the grease that comes out of the bones that makes it so authentic. Next. Okay. These are quite large, they're 6 feet high. And they're weathered wood African aquaba fertility dogs, floats, bones, seaweed, and seeds. And they're called Birth, Death, and Rebirth. And when I was making what I call crucifixion, death, I couldn't believe I was making it. It was like, I just couldn't do it. But I found myself standing there with my drill and drilling holes in the bones, and before I knew it, it was finished. But that was also for the Day of the Dead. Okay, next. The Latin word anima, meaning soul or breath. It is the belief that all natural things, such as plants, animals, rocks, and thunder, have spirits that can influence human events. In East Asia, Buddhism is one of the main religions, is often mixed with animism. Help is often sought for weather conditions to ensure a good harvest. Spirit houses can be found, among other places, beside rice fields to honor the guardian of the land and provide appealing shelters for the spirits. The spirit houses shown were inspired by those I came upon in rice fields in Thailand. And this is 3.5 feet high. Next. This is Journey to the Other Side. It's a ritual in many civilizations. When a person dies, the family places his body in a boat. It is festooned with gifts, candles, and flowers, and set off into the waters to the other world. This is 2 feet across, and it has a figure and some gifts in it. Okay, now this is my last show I did before my retrospective. And just trying to see, Buddhism and animism, which are often mixed in Southeast Asia, have been inspiring my artwork for most of my career. Spirit of the Tree was what this is called, was inspired by an incident that took place in Sulawesi again. I witnessed a ceremony where newborns who die before they've received their souls are buried inside the trunk of a tree so the spirit can return to nature. The hole is then sealed over with palm fiber, and as the tree heals over time, the body is believed to be absorbed and reborn. I was in awe of this ceremony and stored the experience deep in my subconscious. And this is how the creative process works. 25 years later, it surfaced in my work when I came upon shedding sheaths of a palm tree. They were all animated and had individual characteristics of their own, and somehow the connection was made to the spirit that was buried in a tree. It was a moment of magic, and as we artists will agree, when all is right with the universe, the pieces seem to make themselves. This was the beginning of the exhibition, Oneness of Spirit. I believe the concept of oneness with the universe has always been in me and rings true more than any religious training I ever experienced. However, it took my work to make me examine my inner belief and offered a vehicle to express my love and deep concern that I feel for our universe. These have hair, I don't know if you can see the second one from the left, it's horse hair that I painted red, and all the faces are floats, and all the beads are handmade, and these pieces just seem to make themselves. And they're 2 to 2.5 feet high. Next. Spirit of the Sea consists of a collection of gatherings from my morning walks on the beach on a small island, where I spent a month for 2 years doing nothing but swimming, reading books in a hammock, eating fresh fish, and collecting. Oneness of Spirit was in the making. All these materials, this is 4.5 feet high, by the way, were gathered. I ended up being there, can't remember the name of the island. It'll come to me. Anyway, just after a hurricane, and there was practically nobody there. Holbox, thank you. But the walks in the morning, I mean, they were crazy. I just gathered and gathered and gathered. It was wonderful. And I came home and made Spirit of the Sea. I don't know what's happening because some of these, only half of them are coming out. Isn't that the saddest looking room you ever did see? And this is once again all things brought back from the sea. Next, really weird. And it has lobster, shell, crab backs. These are tails of crabs, and there were crabs, just like dead crabs, all over. And I just went along and I just snapped on all the tails and said, thank you, thank you, thank you. And the seaweed, I smuggled in from Canada. Spirit of the Wind is an assemblage of grasses I have collected on my many hikes in nature. Again, the song, Spirit of the Wind, inspired the pieces. The lyrics, Spirit of the Wind, carry me. Spirit of the Wind, carry me home to myself. And this moves, all the fibers move. It's not a pretty work, but it's a powerful one, representing the chaos, anguish, and excitement of creation. These two large jawbones of a horse were gifted to me many years ago, and they had been waiting for the right time to become part of my work. And this is 2 by 3 feet. This piece is 1 foot high and 3 feet long. And it is nature spirits. Nature spirits are worshipped in conjunction with a combination of Buddhism and animism. I embedded the gods in a combination of handmade paper, old rust, and wire to give the feeling of early gods, reminding us they still exist, even if not visible. The cedar shakes that encase them are 170 years old from my community hall in terracotta. The ancient people believed that the forces of nature were driven by these spirits who served as intermediates to the gods. This is because it's got so many different things. The handmade paper mixed with metal and then mixed again with figures was quite powerful. This is once again the same idea of the nature spirits. And once again, this is the roof shingles from my hall in terracotta. I was on my way home from my studio and they were taking these off the roof. And I just went crazy. I went home and gathered garbage bags and got back and brought them back. And these figures in here I make out of poly clay. And I hand rub them all. These Nat spirits are nature spirits worshipped in Burma in conjunction with a combination of Buddhism and animism. They often guard objects and can be found in nature, such as in trees and in rocks. As with the Indonesian gods, I brought home small Nat spirits that have been carved from bone, made molds and cast the spirits. Each one is hand-rubbed with inks to give an ancient appearance. And I use bronze because if any of you have been to Burma, which is now Myanmar, there's so many wonderful temples. I sort of got ahead. Those are the ones from Burma. Next. There is an indigenous saying that when the grandmothers speak, there will be peace in the world. In the year 204, the International Council of 13 indigenous grandmothers formed from all over the world. They represent a global alliance of prayer, education, and healing for our Mother Earth. They bring a new way for all of us to walk on the earth. Of the patriarch. The 4 gods holding their ears. Can you see in the bottom corners? And the 2 top, they're little figures and they're holding their ears. Represent the refusal of the patriarchal leaders to listen. It sadly speaks of the carelessness, ignorance, and destruction that has been taking place within our universe under their rule. It is time for change. I say rebirth because she was here before. She is emerging from her long-awaited period of gestation, fully ready to spread her wings. A time of renewal awaits, and we pray she will be gifted with wisdom, compassion, and support that is so essential to the survival of our universe. May she join hands with the grandmothers in bringing us a new way to walk on Mother Earth. Now I'm just going to leave this on the screen for a minute while I read to you a very, very simple poem I wrote during my retrospective. I was sitting in the gallery every day, surrounded by 75 pieces of my work, and needless to say, they was a great effect on me. It's called Retrospective. My Muse. How can I thank you? I sit in the gallery surrounded by your many gifts, my heart open to listen and my soul to hear. You took me by the hand, and together we orchestrated and called in the universe to come, be seen, be heard. Now the walls vibrate, a reunion of voices, primal utterances from divergent tribes, all coming together to rejoice, to celebrate, to sing our song of the universe, of oneness, of remembrance, of love.